In response to Israel's plan to open two agricultural centers of excellence in Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan backed terror group has warned of attacks targeting Israeli assets in the Union territory. Despite India US deteriorating ties, India Israel defense cooperation to increase is increasing considering a rise in terror threats. Notably, there is a change in the Israeli leadership again. Yes, there is a change in the Israeli leadership. Mr. Netanyahu and his coalition have won the elections, and Mr. Netanyahu has been given about, I don't know, 30 days or so to form a government. So that's what we are witnessing in Israel. The Israelis have the same kind of Westminster inspired parliamentary system that we have in India, which is an offshoot, which is a copy essentially in a way of the British parliamentary system, which inherently is an unstable democratic system. Leadership can change anytime and all that. So that's what Israel is dealing with now. Yes, so Mr. Netanyahu seems to be back in the saddle. He seems to be back in control, possibly, of Israel, of the leadership. And yeah, we have India Israel cooperation. India Israel is planning to open two centers of excellence agricultural in Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, and the Pakistanis are making threats and all that. Yeah. So the question is, will India Israel ties keep on improving and remain strong? And India Israel defense cooperation, other things as well. Will this remain strong despite deteriorating India US ties? And the implicit assumption or implicit question in this is that Israel's foreign policy is a reflection or extension of US foreign policy, which it is to a large extent through no fault of Israel's. Israel is a small nation. It was recreated. Uh, when was it? 1948 or thereabouts? Yeah, in the 1940s, uh, and it's been under siege essentially from its neighbors ever since. So the Israelis, they have a significant diaspora in the US. I think the number of Jews in the US is 7 or 8 million. There's a lot of support to Israel from there. And Israel, the entire situation in the Middle East. Let's take a look at the map of the Middle East. Just for clarity, let's take a look at the map of the Middle East and see where Israel is. Right. So this is the Middle East, and this here is Israel on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. As you can see, it has a lot of adversaries around it: Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, and not far away you have Turkey, and so on. So all the Arab nations, and Turkey is not an Arab nation, obviously, but yeah. So Israel has always been under siege ever since it was recreated, reformed. Yeah. Uh, so Israel, the entire situation in the Middle East, the straight line nations, artificial nations, all that, it has been designed or created by the West in such a way that the entire region stays essentially permanently in turmoil, in conflict. The Middle East has been in crisis for decades, essentially ever since the end of the Second World War, more or less. One conflict, one problem after the other, and it's been designed to be that way. Now, Israel, to a large extent, its foreign policy is indeed an extension of US foreign policy. To a large extent, that is true. But the Israelis do not see themselves as a vassal state of the US. The Israelis Israel as a nation sees itself in a way like India sees itself, as a civilizational state. Israel is way older than the United States. Israel is, I would say, slightly more than 3,000 years old. If you look at the oldest records of the Jewish people, I think it's found in an inscription in Egypt, in one of the pharaonic inscriptions in Egypt, that dates back to slightly more than 3,000 years. So the Jewish people have been around for a long time, at least 3,000 years, and they lived in this region, which is now called Israel. Yeah, there's a whole history behind it. But then the Romans destroyed Israel. They destroyed Judea. They forced lots of Jewish people out of Israel. That became the wandering Jewish diaspora, which settled down in parts of Europe. And then there was the Islamic expansion into this region, the Ottoman expansion. There was Saladin and so many people, because of which the Jewish people were forced to essentially uh, leave this region. So for the longest time, there was no Israel. And then the nation was recreated in the first half of the 20th century. So Israel has a long history. The Jewish people are very proud of that, and because of that, they have their own vision of what the future should be like, and that is not the same. That's not entirely the same as what the U.S. would like them to be. Whenever the Democrats are in power, there's a lot of conflict between Israel and the U.S. The relationship between Obama and Bibi Netanyahu was very strained. It was very cold, and you know it was not a good relationship. So whenever the Democrats in power, there are problems within between in the Israel-US relationship. So the Israelis, they do conform to US diktats in a variety of ways from the foreign policy perspective, but they also have to some extent an independent foreign policy. And India and Israel, the national interests of these two nations, they converged to a significant extent, and that's why the Israelis, they would like that nation to exist for the longest time, and for that to happen, they need strong allies and cooperation. They need cooperation from nations like India. It would be good for both nations that way. So despite, I would say that despite the deteriorating India-US relationship, I think the India-Israel relationship will remain strong, will remain positive, and is going to remain a good cooperative relationship. That's what I see, unless the US decides to go ahead and totally arm twist Israel, in which case the Israelis may have to capitulate. But as long as the Americans don't try to arm twist the Israelis, as long as that doesn't happen, the India-Israel relationship will most likely remain strong, uh, and cooperative. So that's what I believe will happen. But obviously, time will tell. If the India-US relationship becomes so bad that the Americans force Israel to stop cooperating with India, then things may change. But unless that happens, which seems to be somewhat unlikely right now, uh, things will remain good between India and Israel, and that's what I hope.